His work is in the Hubu Street Market. Before finding a counterpart formal job, he had been picking up goods at the Hubu Street Market. The so-called receiving goods, to put it bluntly, is to carry melons, fruits, vegetables, fish, meat, poultry, and eggs from large trucks, weigh them, and then sort them into different stalls. These things used to be done by the store owners themselves, but outsiders often don't know the disgraced store owners are actually rich people. So how come the rich people still work hard? The store owners don't do it? Well, his chance is here. He shared his thoughts with a few store owners and let them touch his muscles. A few store owners met. Okay, the wages were not high at first, and if you distribute it, it was very worthwhile. Each expense was worth a few bucks. The amount of labor for receiving the goods is not large, and the difficulty lies in the time period. In the second half of the night. It can only be in the middle of the night. First, trucks can't enter the city in daylight. Second, vegetables are squeamish and cannot be the next day. The appearance of the next day will be wrong. Appearance is the lifeblood of vegetables, and the price is all on it. Regarding the quality of vegetables, the store owner Brother Hu had a very insightful discussion. Hu said that the vegetables are misses, and the good price is at the age of 20. Once it wilts, the skin collapses and the price is crumbled. Don't even think about it. Leaving aside miss, in comparison, what he likes to pick most is still vegetables. Not oily, not greasy. After the receiving is over, rush hands, he can go to bed at dawn. The most feared is the damn poultry eggs. Whether it's chicken eggs, duck eggs, or quail eggs, you can't even pick one up with a slip of your hand or a splash. As long as he claps once, his sweat for a month is no longer sweat, but urine. Urine is worthless. When he first started receiving the goods, he was a little awkward and seemed aggrieved. Now it's better again. He likes it very much. He is not afraid of physical exertion, and it is good to waste a little at night. What is the brute force doing all over the body? Every day when he gets up, the little brother in the crotch stands there heedlessly, still aiming, and has no target. It's much better now. The little brother understands the truth, and basically no trouble in the early morning. But then again, he still didn't like it, mainly because of insecurity. To make a living, it is of course no problem to make a temporary transition at the Hubu Street Food Market, but he can never accept the myth for a lifetime. Is also a 24-year-old person, always should have a wife, and always should have a home. When he thinks of this, there is always unspeakable loneliness in his heart, and some self-pity elements. Especially afraid of looking at the shelves. The shelves in the morning are dazzling, lined with leeks, celery, lettuce, peppers, garlic, beef, lamb, chicken wings, duck feet, pork kidneys, and smooth round eggs. None of these belongs to him. It's not that he can't afford it. It's that the most daily lifestyle, like buying vegetables, does not belong to him. He wanted to have such a day. It was a Sunday morning, a very homely day. He woke up as soon as he awoke, took her by the hand, and walked around in front of the shelves of the Hubu Street Food Market, and then pick and choose with her, even a piece of tofu, even a handful of spinach. How nice to live like that. There will be. There will always be. As a receiver, he never looked at the shelves when he was off work. At dawn, he turned around and left, returned to home, and fell asleep. The vegetable market in Hubu Street is some distance away from his residence. He planned to rent a room nearby, but the price was nearly doubled due to the location. Livelihood in a city is not easy. It was not that he had never thought of going back to his hometown. But he couldn't. He couldn't go back. It's not a problem of the face. If he didn't pass the university entrance exam, it would be better. He would either start a family or get a part-time job. Now he doesn't even have a piece of land in his hometown or any savings. How could he survive? The only thing he can do is going out to work. Instead of going back and coming out again, it's better to stay in the city. The pace of his life is chaotic. He can neither keep up with the trip in the city, nor can he keep up with the trip in the country. Back then, the middle school classmates were all fathers and mothers. He's a bachelor and even has no ability to go home for the new year. One uncle 100 yuan, two uncle 200 yuan. He is valuable. How could he become a dragon? How could he be admitted to university? One should not be talented to this point. After all, he's young and full of firepower. It had only been 2 or 3 days after breaking up with her. His body is strange. Thinking of her thin and strong waist, and thinking of her steadfast buoyancy. But would she still be willing? She drank a lot of wine that day. He was not sure at all. Give it a try, then give it a try. He picked up the phone in one hand, but put the other hand in his trouser pocket and pressed it himself. She did not answer. The phone finally said, "Sorry, the phone you dialed is not answered at the moment." He closed the phone, extremely ashamed. This kind of thing could not have been repeated over and over again. He stood on the street, looking at the sunset in the winter, angry with himself, with unspeakable annoyance and a little sadness. He just stood there, holding the phone in one hand and holding himself in the other. But after all, he could not escape the temptation of the body and dialed the phone again. This time it got through, and it was overjoyed. "Who is it?" she said. "It's me," he said. "Who are you?" she said. Her breath sounded very empty, and her voice was especially hoarse, as if she was thousands of miles away. His heart sank. The problem is not that her breath is not empty. The problem is that she really didn't hear his voice. It's not like pretending. "The nobles forget about things," he said, deliberately raising his voice high. This high is actually careless. "It's me, schoolmate and fellow, your elder brother." He heard it himself, and his tone was slick. At this time, only can the slickness preserve his fragile decency. He shouldn't have made this call. There was no sound on the phone. There was a long, long silence. He was so embarrassed, and he couldn't wait to throw the phone out from Nanjing to his hometown. This call should never be made at all. An unexpected thing happened at this moment. After a long period of silence, her cry suddenly came from the phone. To be precise, it was a sob. She yelled, "Brother!" and said, "Come and see me." He held the phone to his ear until he walked into the basement, until opened the door of her room. When their eyes were facing each other, their mobile phones were still pressed against their ears, and they were already hot. But her forehead was hotter than the phone. She was having a high fever, and her 2 pupils were burning brightly, beautiful and pitiful. "Get up," he said loudly. "I'll take you to the hospital." She was crying just now, and she seemed to be better when he came, with a smile on her face. "No," she said hoarsely, "I can't die." He looked at her head on the pillow. Lonely, a large part of the eye sockets were sunken since that day. She must have been on it for too long, otherwise it wouldn't be like this. He remembered the few days when he had been in bed last month, so suddenly there was a pang of sorrow. "You just lay here?" he said, asking knowingly. "Yes, I didn't lay in the Jinli Hotel." She was still joking. "Hurry up and go to the hospital." "Don't need to." "Go!" "I can't die." She finally lost her temper at him. Once in bed after all, and she was too lonely. She took him as a relative for no reason. She was only a family, and said, "You're nagging to death." "Let's go." "I can't die," she said. "Holding 2 more days, it will pass. Why go to the hospital? One trip is 400 or 500. He wanted to say, "I'll pay it for you," and swallowed it. They all have a common problem. They have pathological self-esteem on the issue of money. He smiled and said, "Go, I'll treat you." "I don't want you to treat me to get sick." She closed her eyes and turned around. "I can't die. I'll be fine in 2 days." He no longer insisted, but his hands and feet were swift. First boiled the water and then took care of her room. He doesn't know what she is like on weekdays. At this moment, her room can no longer be regarded as a room. The floor was covered with toilet paper, paper cups, his packaging bags, banana peels, socks, and 2 crumpled underwear. As he cleaned up, he complained, "How come you are as a girl? How can you get married? Who will want you? Whoever marries you back is freaking stupid." After complaining, he also finished cleaning. After cleaning, the water was boiled. He poured her a glass of boiling water, told her hot, and went downstairs. He bought cold medicine, a thermometer, alcohol, cotton wool, bread, snack noodles, roll paper, fruits, and a box of Dove chocolates. He took the purchased things out of the plastic bag, neatly stacked them on the table, and they were all in place. He sat on the edge of her bed, half hugged her in his arm, took the cup to give her medicine, and at the same time fed a lot of hot water. When she was full, she raised her brows and turned her head to the side. He started feeding bread. He tore the bread into pieces and stuffed them into her mouth. When she was full, she raised her brows again and turned her head back. He then stuffed a pear. Without finding the fruit knife, he gnawed randomly around the surface of the pear with his teeth. "Why didn't you call me yesterday?" she said. "Why didn't you call me the day before yesterday?" After drinking and eating enough, her spirit returned. How to answer this? It's not easy to answer. He ignored her, took off his shoes, and got into the bed on the other end of the bed. They just hid under the covers and watched, but there was nothing to say. Suddenly, she moved her body inward and raised the corner of the bed. She said, "Come on, and lay down next to me." He smiled and said, "It's better to lay here. If to lay down with you, I would have side thoughts. You are sick." "Brother, don't you know how stinky your feet are?" She kicked him. "Your feet stink."